Welcome back. We're very excited about a new feature for our webinar series called The Conversation Continues. We received so many good questions from you that we wanted to continue with that conversation. Willie, are you up for some more questions?
Absolutely, happy to do it.
Wonderful. Great. So this came from Joel. When referring to customers on number 2, are we talking about internal customers within an organization or external customers to whom an organization is providing services or products? Great question.
Thank you, Joe. That's a terrific question, a very important one. Let's start here. Let's understand, as Peter Drucker reminded us, that success occurs outside the boundaries of the organization, not inside. Inside is where we mobilize our resources and count the money. Now, having said that, it's always the external perspective first. But, you know, organizations are divided into various functions and business units and regions, et cetera, et cetera. And unless the organization acts coherently behind a strategy, it's not going to happen. So a strategy that just exists at the top of the organization without these forces being mobilized coherently towards the same goal, ultimately, is never going to go anywhere. Now, here's the way I think about it. If you're in a function like HR or operations or IT, first task is a clear line of sight to what the organization is striving to achieve outside the boundaries of the organization. So a working knowledge of the external competitive environment is a crucial aspect. You don't have to be an expert in it, but be familiar with it, have a good working knowledge of it. Then discern from there and discover for yourself and clarify, you owe this to your own team, what is the organization striving to do by way of its overarching priorities in service of creating that impact externally. Now translate that down to what you as a function will do in order to drive success for that external result. So it's a question of understanding what the corporation needs from you by way of a contribution. I'll give you this little metaphor. If you're walking along the sidewalk and there you see 3 workmen toiling away on the sidewalk, and you stop the first one and say, well, what are you doing? And he says, well, I'm digging a hole. Second one, what are you doing? I'm laying bricks. Third one, what are you doing? I'm building a cathedral. Then what good leaders do is to tell the organization, we're building a cathedral. You're not just digging holes, you're creating a strong foundation so the cathedral will stand for 1,000 years. You're not just laying bricks, you're creating a beautiful facade so people will come from the ends of the earth to admire what we do. You have to define the cathedral. That's what the organization is striving to do. And your function is digging the hole, building the foundations, laying the bricks, etc., all in service of building that cathedral. That's strategic coherence.
And that comes through simplicity, storytelling, all the elements you talked about.
Yes.
So all of these, each element has its own process.
Each element has its own process, but working towards a common aim.
Right.
And I just want to add one further thing. It's sometimes true, of course, that we want to decipher and understand clarity. What's the organization striving to do? What are the top 3 or 4 priorities? And then we turn around and say, well, our leaders are not clear. I would just suggest this to you. You need to take on that responsibility of leadership for yourselves. You need to discover the clarity. Go and have a rigorous dialogue with the folk up the line. Take a piece of paper, write it down, get to a common framework, understand it, and then translate that to your team so they can function in that kind of coherent way.
And this gives everyone autonomy to take their part.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
not just wait.
Take it on. Leadership is not about why weren't they? Leadership is about what am I going to do to create a success.
Right. All right, one more question here from James. What is the relationship between staying current with strategy based on the shifting marketplace and gaining alignment within the organization?
Okay, that's a really good challenge, because unless there's alignment, the strategy won't work. And alignment takes time, particularly if you want to shift the culture, shift the compensation system, shift the competencies of the individuals. But the harsh reality that we face is that structure follows strategy. So first we have to be clear about the strategy, and then to have the organization design, structure, competencies, culture, measurement systems, all working together to mobilize the strategy. Now that can take time, but they need to work together. And unless they do work together, it won't work. Now, in the meantime, of course, the environment is constantly shifting. And as Jack Welch reminded us, if the gap between the rate of change externally is bigger than the rate of change internally, the end is near. So we've got to do that rapidly. The only point I would make is this. We should never, ever work without clarity of focus. So what we're doing when we inject change into the organization is shifting from one focus to another focus and mobilizing the organization to shift to that new focus. And that's the leadership task. So constant change and renewal is not about being unfocused. It's about shifting focus, clarity of focus, from one state of affairs to a new future state of affairs. Doing that rapidly comes through practice and understanding.
And also, with the idea of focus, seeing what you're going to be focusing on, removing the underperforming parts, you have a great story about that.
Yeah, it's a story from gardening. It's about this issue of choice making. And it was a kind of vivid illustration to me of how real it is. I have an office that's on the 33rd floor of a building, and I have a balcony that overlooks Central Park, which is delightful. I feel very fortunate. At a certain stage, we decided that we need to beautify it, and we planted some geraniums there. And my wife, who's a writer, has an office as well, and she has a balcony, and she had geraniums, so they face the same way, and we watered them on the same day. I had a client who came in to visit me, and we went out onto my balcony, and we were staring out across Central Park, and he looked across at Laura's balcony. He said, "Oh my goodness, Willie," he said, "look at those beautiful geraniums." And I said, "Yes, those are Laura's geraniums, my wife, but these are mine here." And he looked at those and he said, "Well, it's a pity, isn't it? Because they look a little bit insipid, they're sickly." I thought, well, that's not very nice. He's insulted my geraniums, but rightfully so. Laura's geraniums were fuller and bigger and etc. So when my client left, I had lunch with Laura, I said, they face the same way, etc., and yours are flourishing and mine are not. So maybe you've been cheating. Maybe you've been using Miracle Grow or cow manure or something. She said, no. Come here, let me illustrate how it works. And she came to my balcony with a pair of scissors, and she brutally assaulted my geraniums, cutting into them deeply, and I was alarmed. I thought she started to become brutal. I said, "Stop, you're destroying my garden." And she said, "No, I'm creating it. Just wait 7 days." Sure enough, 7 days later, I had the most beautiful flourishing geraniums. Right. I had a new client who came and said, "Oh boy, what a beautiful guy." I said, "Oh well, it's nothing. It's the deadheading." So Laura explained. She said, "This is called deadheading." A few days later, we were having lunch with her, and I said, "It's not just deadheading. I've validated a law of the universe through this small example, which is the following. Whenever you remove the underperforming parts of any living system, all the remaining life forces of that system get injected into the parts that matter most. And that garden, that living thing, that will flourish, whether it's your garden or your business. And I'm not talking about removing people. I'm talking about removing underperforming products, complications.
Processes.
That's the deadheading. Processes that are no longer working.
Yeah.
Trying to serve customers where they're no longer in your target, these absorb energy. Right. So you need to do the deadheading, subtract first, then multiply. Right. That's the most powerful formula in the world. Yeah. Subtract first, then multiply.
Yeah, and I think that story is a great illustration. Oh, okay, from Jabi. Since competitive advantages are transient, how do we ensure sustainability and stay ahead? Do we keep revising our strategies as leaders, or can I say that we have to constantly keep innovating by disrupting our own product or services that we offer?
Okay, so the question is great, but may I just challenge the way it's framed? I try to do this in a friendly way. You're framing your question from the inside out. How fast should I change? Should I cannibalize my own products? If you ask the question from the outside in, you'll get a good answer. The inside out questions never produce a good answer. What should we do doesn't produce a good answer, because the world doesn't care what we do. They care only about what they get. So if you start on the outside and say, what are the emerging changes in the competitive environment, the trends, the patterns that are challenging our existing business model? What are the emerging trends in customer needs? How are these shifting? What's the most important needs? Then bring that in, and that then dictates to you what change you need to make. So, I sometimes get asked the question, should we just shake things up for the sake of shaking them up? No, that's not a really good thing to do. Let's have our internal actions be dictated by external events. Outside-in thinking is the rule of the road, and I think you'll get to a very good answer on that one.
Great. So we have two questions from Nirmala and Florence that I think we can combine. They're very good questions that go well together. From Nirmala, is the concept of a CEO even relevant anymore? Followed by Florence's question, I believe that key number 4 has a viable point. Having the ability to get past the constraints that exist when working on technological process requires a true leader to make it work. Can we as leaders allow others to take the lead when change is required?
Okay, so I'll tell you what I think is outdated, is the concept of a kind of white knight on a charger, the sort of idea that leadership is a solo game. I think what we need to understand is that leadership is a team sport. I was listening to an interview one time of a great football player who was being interviewed about his time with the San Francisco 49ers. And the interviewer said to him, oh my goodness, you must have played at the same time as this famous quarterback. What was his name again? You'll remember his name. Well, there was a famous quarterback in the San Francisco 49ers. And he said, well, you must have played.
Hockey fan.
Yeah, you're a hockey fan. You must have played at the same time as this famous quarterback. Let's call him Sam, right? He said, yes, I did. So the interviewer said, well, what did it feel like? Joe Montana was his name.
Yes.
Joe Montana, let's come back to him. He said, what did it feel like to play on the same team as Joe Montana? And he said, when Joe was on the team, I played better. Now, for me, that's a great definition of effective leadership. So leadership is a team sport. It's unlocking the energy, the motivations, the sense of meaning in the entire organization. I was running a workshop for a large company, and the CEO came in to give a little talk. And he was asked this question, what's your philosophy of leadership? Leading one of the biggest companies in the world. He said, I think about it as having my hands on the large wheel in a gearbox. I thought, where's this going? And he said, every time I turn this very large wheel just one little notch, all the smaller wheels are spinning faster and faster. And those smaller wheels are you. And I have to make sure that I turn this big wheel on just the right issues.
Right.
So you are spending energy on the right issues, right? All of you also have your hand on a large wheel, and your responsibility is the same. Right. So we need to mesh together. And then a reminder came, the role of a gearbox, and he was also an engineer, the role of a gearbox is to transmit power. And that's what leaders do.
Right. And that's why process is so important.
That's why process is
because
important.
Then you're not making statements that maybe you don't really believe, or the statements that you don't define the intention and the goal, which makes the gears, everything go crazy.
So I think the way of leading is this is what's important, and this is what we're going to do to make it happen.
Right.
So that comes back to processing.
Right.
Yeah.
And as we finish up here, what's the Nishi quote?
Oh, people will do almost any what if you give them a good why.
Great. And I think that's a great way to end. I'd like to thank you for all of your great questions, and I hope you enjoyed The Conversation Continues with Professor Willie Pietersen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all. Lots of good luck. Bye-bye.